Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with New York City jazz trombonist Elliot Mason. Originally from England, he started out on the trumpet, then got fascinated with his father's trombone, and that would become his instrument. He talked about his newest 2018 CD, Before, Now, and After, and that's what we covered about his career during the interview, and it's gone all over the world and to many famed venues, like Jazz at Lincoln Center with Wynton Marsalis. His past is full of highlights, but he says there is much more to do. So get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Elliot, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here, Joe.
So let's start off here with Before, Now, and After. It's a great album, and I want to know from you, how do you feel about this album?
How do I feel about it? Well, it's different from other two albums that I've done, because I do have a band with my brother, Brad. Both of those albums are original music. It's kind of written for both of us and our combined vision, and this is different from that. This is kind of myself stepping out a little bit and maybe more of my own vision, but also how the title kind of came about. I ended up getting a commission to write something for MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, and I kind of combined, when thinking of writing for something for them, I kind of combined some of their goals and what they kind of embrace along with what I'm embracing as well. And so that's kind of how the album started. Now, how I feel about it, it then developed into kind of what it is, where I just wanted to really just include just influences from the past that have had like a big impact on myself, whether it's soloists or songwriters or just recordings in general, but also hear them, not kind of to regurgitate them, but to hear them in a new vision. So it's kind of developed into what it did in the end, and I'm very happy of it, and I'm extremely proud of it. You know, I think it's fortunate that in the studio we had some really nice moments that happened. So I'm happy. I feel it's different from what I've done before. So it's not Mason Brothers. It's its own thing, but I'm definitely proud of it.
Well, speaking of merging this grand opportunity with MoMA, that had to have been a huge moment for you to have one of the leading modern art galleries in the world approach you. So talk to me a little bit about that venture.
They have a summer garden event where they bring in artists. And it's actually about writing for the event. So you could choose to just write something that you're dealing with at the moment. But I kind of took it as an opportunity to maybe kind of push me in a direction maybe that I hadn't written in before. So that's how this kind of that was the title track, Before, Now, and After. And that's how the kind of first shape of the album came about, and that's just wonderful. I mean, it's in the summer. It's an outdoor event in their garden, and thousands of people there. It was super hot. Of course, it was like the hottest day in New York. You know, the actual concert was. So we were all in suits, sweating like crazy. But I mean, it was really wonderful, and just it's like a free event for their patrons and anyone that chooses to come in and enjoy the music. So, you know, that was kind of how it first started. And then I kind of developed and got shaped more to my own life journey as I ended up getting, well, the last year has been interesting, but I ended up getting married to the love of my life, who's a wonderful musician, vocalist, on the album, and also we had a little one just 3 months ago. So the process of the album, my wife Sophia was pregnant, and we were writing lyrics that had to do with that. So it definitely kind of took a slightly different shape, but still coming from basically life's influence and life's journey.
Beautiful, man. So like 20 years from now, the magnanimousness of this is going to be huge for you, I imagine.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, you know, there's parts where, like, one of the tunes has like the baby's heartbeat, and that was when, you know, we were doing the sonogram thing and recording all that, and so I actually put that on the track. And there's lyrics that kind of involve him, and also just like the story of how Sophia and myself met. So it is very personal, but I always feel like that kind of brings out more of an emotional quality to not only writing, but also, how you perform something. If you're performing it for a certain reason, you're trying to either embrace an emotion or evoke a certain character, then it becomes more personal, rather than just playing your horn for the sake of playing your horn, or playing this piece of music the way that you like it. I mean, it becomes definitely in the studio we were talking about how we were going to approach stuff, and definitely the understanding of where the music came from kind of played a big role.
I always kind of harken back to this story. I remember there was a Bob Dylan film, and at one point he's sitting at a table, and there was a maid in the room, and he's just kind of lamenting, what am I going to write about? What should I write about? And she just stopped flabbergasted and said, write what's around you. Why are you trying to be so profound about something that's not of you? Write what is around you. And I always think about that from an artistic sense. All of us are weaving our own personal, unique narrative, and it means so much more, especially I've noticed in jazz, covering jazz. Anybody that really deeply was involved, like, say, a Mingus or somebody like that really regurgitated their reality, has such a profound way of composing and putting music together.
Exactly. That's great. I love that. And that's when if I just looked at the tunes on the album, I guess maybe 10 years ago, I would be very surprised if I had a glimpse of the future of, like, really? You're going to record, like, Caravan or Revolution? You're going to touch Revolution? I mean, like, that's an untouchable, like, recording. But at the same time, I kind of didn't want to run away from it because it's had such an impact on me. And I don't, obviously not trying to do it the same way, just trying to maybe hear it slightly different in a new light, or, but still also try and evoke the same kind of feelings that when I first heard it, or when I continue to put it on, there's something the way I gravitate towards that stuff musically. There's a reason that it has such a huge impact on me that I feel like I do want to include it in I guess my musical kind of history of story, which this album is kind of about.
So you were born in England. You started out on the trumpet. You got fascinated with your father's trombone and focused on the trombone. Talk to me about your childhood and kind of your evolution in not only music but in instruments.
Well, yeah, I mean, I started young. Obviously, it was around Brad and myself because both our parents are musicians. So my dad is a trombone player and trumpet player, and my mom's a jazz vocalist. So there was a lot going on in the house that just seemed normal to us at the time, as far as like my dad's influences and my mom's influences being always on the radio, or whether it's albums or records being played in the house. So it seemed very natural for us just to try and play these instruments that Dad was playing all the time. So he never really forced it upon us. He just kind of just left them around, and we were trying to play his expensive Mount Vernon Bach, instruments, and he was like, you know what, I'll get you your own little student model to play around with. So that's how it kind of started, and then it kind of developed into from just us wanting to do it, and then I guess it got to a point where we realized that that's what we wanted to do for a living, and this was before we went to college. So my brother then ended up applying for Berklee College of Music, and at that time, I think they had maybe a shortage of brass or whatever it was, but he got a very good scholarship, and I kind of applied shortly after, and with a similar thing. So, our parents, being musicians, were like questioning us, are you sure this is what you want to do? But at the same time, when we really decided, yes, this is something that we want to do, and they were completely very supportive. So that's what got us basically out in the U.S., was to come to college. And after we graduated, we decided, all right, let's just try and check out New York for maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years. And of course, it's very hard to do that. We got bit by the bug, and we're still there now, 20 plus years later. And, our parents still think that we're coming home at some point, but we'll have to see. But that's how New York, just to be around there, just pick up on the energy, be involved in playing with some of the our idols and some of our favorite musicians is just, it's very hard to turn your back on and walk away from that. So that's where we're at.
Cool. So when you were growing up, what jazz albums did you listen to that left a big impression on you?
Well, it's interesting because I kind of went through a phase, but also I kind of went through a player phase. To begin with, my dad basically gave me a bunch of tapes, and mainly tapes of just trombone players. So whether it was Frank Rossolino, J.J. Johnson, Carl Fontana, Bill Waters, I mean, it was everyone, Irby Green. I mean, it was just endless, and kind of said, this is jazz trombone. And I looking back on that, I really like it because if someone would have said this was really hard or challenging, or then I maybe would have approached something differently. But when someone just says this is how it sounds, then you kind of you view it slightly differently. So it started with that. But then, of course, at the same time, my brother's in the same house, listening to Freddie Hubbard, Woody Shaw, or starting with like Harry James, Clifford Brown, Louis Armstrong, Dizzy Gillespie. So, I mean, I'm hearing that going on as well. So I think I started through this very strong kind of trombone, inspirational kind of phase, but also hearing, wait a second, like what's going on over there with like some of Freddie stuff and Woody Shaw. And then as I got through to college, I really started kind of just listening to, I think, music without really thinking of it as instruments, and started really just enjoying like John Coltrane or Ornette Coleman or McCoy Tyner, and so I mean, you know, any one of Coltrane's albums would be one of my favorite. At this point, that is definitely one of my strong idols, you know. So Coltrane plays the blues. I mean, I could put that on, and that would change. If I was feeling down, that could change the way that I'm feeling for the whole day. I mean, and that kind of power, I think, is just a wonderful thing to be able to possess, or just even to have as a listener, that could change your mood. So,
you know, I recently saw a show here in Kansas City with the trombonist, and it was a trio. And I was really honing in on it. I've seen the trombone quite a bit, but for some reason this last show transfixed me. And I'm thinking about all those instruments that are on the stage that have this quality that can become improv quite quick. And I think the trombone's a very unique instrument in the fact that all of these other instruments have these buttons and these very clear ways that you hold your fingers and you do your thing. But with the trombone, you slide and you kind of get to do your own thing. It seems a little bit more improv than the others. Is that a correct characterization, I should say?
Well, yes, absolutely. And it's very unique. And so there are certain things about it that are challenging. So to play fluidly, or to play some lines that you might hear that maybe come from other instruments, can be a challenge. But there's also an aspect of the horn where the nuances and the subtleties are very unique to that horn. And so it's always, you know, for me, my kind of favorite players on the instrument kind of embrace both. It's they're able to use this kind of sweet side of the horn, but it also can be raucous. It can be raw. It can be intense. It can be there. You know, this is kind of new wave where it's of young players that have kind of crossed this technical barrier where it can be very fluid and very versatile. So for me, I feel like, you know, some other instruments try to capture some of like the slides, the bends, and that characteristic of the singing voice that it has, where it's actually more natural on the trombone, some characteristics. And then once again, you know, there are other things that are very challenging, but it definitely has, a unique sound to it. And I really hope that it kind of comes back in the spotlight, because, you know, some of my favorite trombone players like today really have a unique voice on the instrument.
So over the years, you played with the Count Basie Orchestra, the Mingus Big Band, Maria Schneider's Orchestra, and you've even played with Paul Simon, Willie Nelson. There's a lot of people that go throughout your career lineage here, and I want to know, what do you learn from being in either these big outfits with a lot of mileage or these musicians that are almost legendary? What do you get from them?
I think, everyone kind of has their own thing that they bring, but I mean, I think that the underlying thing that everyone has is their own voice, and it's just so strong throughout whatever they do. It just sounds like them. It's something that I've always lent towards, which is it's okay to sound like yourself. It's like no one really wants to, as much as I would give my left arm to sound like Coltrane, I would still prefer to sound worse, but true to myself, because that's what gets me up in the morning to actually play. And so when you hear like for me, I mean, it's like Count Basie. It's a band that I'd heard a lot when I was young, but actually sitting in the band and playing with them is a complete other thing. I mean, it's like I actually was like questioning whether I had the right music up. The way they were playing it was so different from how it looked on the page, and it was just like wonderful to experience that. So all these bands have their own voice and have an approach, and these musicians, and I think that's what I definitely try and nurture within myself, but also students as well, because it's tough as far as it's like you're learning a language, and so sometimes when you're first learning, it's like you have a few things that you can say and you want to kind of piece them together, but the end result is really that's not what it's about. It's like we're using that to construct a sentence that we want to say, or to talk about a subject that we want to talk about. And so, I want to hear someone. I don't want to hear someone sound like someone else. I want to hear them sound like themselves. And so, that's definitely strong throughout all the people that I've been fortunate to play with.
So whether it's these musicians have consciously, taught you things, or by osmosis you've gotten this, you're an instructor. You've been at NYU, the Juilliard School. What do you take from all these experiences, not only being around these people, but your own experience as a soloist and a performer and a recording artist? How do you use all of that to influence your students?
That's a good question. I mean, I think for me, I like to teach from kind of an inspiration standpoint. I mean, I know there's definitely times not to always be like, yes, you sound great when you don't. But at the same time, I feel like I get better results from just really making sure the student knows what is working for them. Like, this is a strong point, and this, well, okay, we need to work on this side, but at the same time, understanding the pluses of their playing. So, I mean, I think for me, I like to, in my lessons, I like to play with the student. I think that's really important, rather than just me kind of lecturing. I try and really kind of see what they're inspired by, and we kind of nurture that. And then maybe if they haven't checked out something, what about checking out this or getting into this? And I feel like those, for me, I really enjoy teaching. It's very inspirational for me, especially, when you have someone that is, that really has something, and you can hear it, and it's like, oh, man. And there's a lot, and I'm fortunate, like being part of Juilliard and NYU, to really, have a bunch of people that give me that feeling when I hear them. It's something that I feel like it affects how I practice, and it affects how I write. We definitely just try to stay true to. I'm trying to inspire them, even though they know how the business is. I mean, they know what's going on. Everyone's aware of, okay, it's tough out here, especially for the instrument. It's tough, but at the same time, we're dealing with that, but we're also just dealing with like inspirational stuff and trying to get better and improve and look at the bigger picture.
So how do you feel about your career? You've had a lot of things happen. I mean, you've won the Frank Rossellino Award. You've been all over the place. You're in New York City, the cradle of jazz. You're an instructor. You've got so much going on. Do you feel good about your career?
Yeah, I do, but I also strive for more. And the wonderful thing about this album is that I was able to do it, able to use the musicians that I wanted to use, to record it and put it out there. And like I said, I'm very proud of it. And I'm also extremely fortunate to be a part of the Jasmine Kissena Orchestra, which is run by Wynton Marsalis, and I mean, the musical experience that are involved in that are just amazing. But the only thing that kind of, what happens is like now I'm kind of filling in the gaps with my own stuff as far as our schedule, because our schedule's very intense. We have 35 weeks of the year that we play, and this is full weeks of 7-hour rehearsals, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then a themed concert Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We're on the road for 4 to 5 months of the year. It's a full-time gig, and I love it. And I definitely enjoy being a part of it. And I've grown so much since I've been in the band for the last 10 years. But my own stuff kind of takes a back seat to that, and especially with my brother's schedule as well. Like I said, we have our own band, so trying to fit in stuff together. It's just kind of filling in the gaps. And so I am happy with my career, but at the same time, I would like to be doing more of my own stuff and more stuff with my brother. And that may be something that happens in the future, hopefully.
So there's a lot of people that you perform with over the years that I would love to see personally, and I know a lot of jazz fans would. I mean, you go from jazz at Lincoln Center to Toshiko Akiyoshi's orchestra, all kinds of things. But I want to ask you, what shows have you witnessed jazz-wise that have really influenced you quite a bit?
That's interesting. Well, we did one show with the NEHGS Masters where Bobby Hutchinson and Kenny Barron played a duet. I think it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. You might be able to find it maybe on YouTube or something. And the band was basically sitting on stage. So the big band was sitting on stage. We had just performed and we stayed on stage, and they came up and just did a duet. And that had to be just one of the highlights, like musically, of my life. And actually recently, someone brought that up, and we actually in the band, and we actually kind of listened to it again, and it still sounded amazing to me. But there was just something about being on stage, right next to, like when Bobby Hutchinson was playing, and the sound, the choices, the musicality. It was something that will definitely stay with me. That's definitely, I think that's probably the top. We've also, I've also been on stage with Joe Temperley, where he's brought the band, that's a baritone player that was in the band for over 20 years, and he just passed away a few years ago. But he had the ability to bring the band to tears. So, you look around and people would literally be crying on stage. And it's like you don't get that from just a few years of playing the instrument. That's like a lifetime to be able to play a melody with that kind of emotional feeling. So that's a couple of definitely my musical highlights here.
So why do you love jazz?
Interesting. I think because it's the freedom, the freedom of the expression, and the connection. And I think there's just so many aspects about it. I love improvising. I love being able to approach maybe the same tune like 100 different ways, or just being in the moment and seeing where we're going to end up, and that becomes the journey. And I think obviously it's had a huge impact on me from an early age. For me, it's my way of expressing the way I feel. I'm not really a singer. I'm not a lyricist, or I don't really, maybe I should, but like write poetry or stuff like that. This is my like freedom of speech and expression, and so that's why I think I love to do it, because I feel like I can kind of say whatever I want to, but through the horn.
So everyone has a version of you, your family, your friends, your fans, your students. But at the end of the day, you're in control of your life. What is your perception of who you are?
Man, I don't know. I don't know about this one. I think I just try and stay true to who I am. That's the main kind of underlying thing that kind of comes out in the music and myself, good or bad. You know, it's like, this is me. So, I mean, I think that's definitely the main kind of quality that comes through. I mean, I definitely, you know, star sign wise, like I'm a typical Capricorn, you know, that kind of stuff. I'm like hardworking, you know, I love to practice. I love to do what I do. And I think, you know, mostly that kind of shows, but, because, you know, this stuff, we don't go into it for finances or for other reasons or for fame or anything. It's like you really have to love this. So I think like musically and just the instrument, it's like something that I love to do, and I stay true to my voice.
Beautiful. Elliot, it's a great answer. It's a great way to wrap everything up. Thank you for taking a minute out to talk about before, now, and after, and I think we covered that, metaphorically speaking. So thank you very much for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Man, it's a pleasure to talk to you as well, Joe. I appreciate that.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in England, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Elliot for his time, his stories, and his cool. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.